Welcome everyone to our panel on public-private partnerships and innovation in government. And we have a really eclectic panel for this and some really amazing people who are doing really interesting things in this area. So I'm MC Sungaila, and I'm an appellate lawyer at the Complex Appellate Litigation Group here in Newport Beach. And I wanted to allow first each of the folks to just do a brief introduction of themselves, and then we'll start into our discussion of some of the innovative and outside the box things that these gentlemen are doing. So Chris?
Sure, all right, what's up everybody? Chris Duncan, Mayor of San Clemente, Sinan's hometown. Yeah. Usually I appear in rainbow flip-flops and a sport coat and maybe like some board shorts, so I dressed up for y'all. And thank you for putting the government guys after lunch, right, Noah? I mean, this is where we deserve, I guess, to be. Hey, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about the success stories we've had in San Clemente and where we hope to go, and that's sort of blowing up the old model of government getting in the way. But does anybody remember what Ronald Reagan said were the 9 scariest words in the English language? Does anybody that had to do with the government? Anybody remember that? I'm from we're from the government and we're here to help. So I intend to blow that up because actually there's a role for government here, and I think it should be I'm from the government and I'm here to partner, right? I'm here to get out of the damn way. I'm here to facilitate y'all making business, right? And making money. So that's, I think, what the future is. And I mean, I'll just give a quick example. I got my friends from Original Sprout up here. We host the World Surf League finals in San Clemente, right? Like, I hope everybody knows that. Super Bowl surfing, right at Lower Trestles, just south of us. And we're a surf community, of course. You know, nothing against Huntington Beach, who's not here, but we are Surf City, USA, not them. Easier to say with them not here. But, so this is a huge event. 13 million people globally watch this event, right? In the past, the city had kind of, you know, sat around, you know, maybe waited passively for somebody to ask, maybe even rejected a request to put an extra banner up. And I was like, forget that. We are leaning in, and we're gonna make this the best damn World Surf League finals ever, right? So I started looking around and finding ways to engage our local businesses. And an example I can give was Original Sprout right here, right? So I met with these folks with iHeartMedia actually, and we got to kind of chat a little bit. I saw the alignment with what the World Surf League was talking about. Talking about clean oceans, talking about being out and being active, you know, using products that are clean and don't have a lot of chemicals in them. These are all things that the World Surf League was talking about. So, you know, I make this introduction. You know, I like to say sort of, I was like the third wheel here, right? Like I make this introduction between Original Sprout and World Surf League, their chief revenue officer. And, you know, there was a Zoom and, you know, people were getting kind of friendly. There was followed by an email, and it kind of felt like actually 2 lovebirds, you know, falling in love. And I was like on the email string, you know, and I was like, at some point on like the 3rd email, right, Michael, I was like, I'm gonna kind of get off the string here. Like, I'm a little uncomfortable. You guys seem like you're falling in love. Bottom line is, end of the day, Original Sprout, title sponsor for the Rip Curl World Surf League finals, and the #1 sponsor for the Longboard Championships, right? So that's just an example. That doesn't happen if there isn't somebody like me who's got that perspective, that perspective from 10,000 feet. That's what government can bring to the private sector, right? We can connect the dots. We can see commonalities and alignment, and we can connect businesses, and that helps our community, it helps our local businesses, it helps businesses from outside of the area feel more willing and able to come into our communities and invest, right? And I was probably gonna talk a little bit about that. So I just wanna, you know, sort of drive that point home. We also host the World Pickleball Championships, so Major League Pickleball becoming, that's partly, I think, why we got Sinan in his pickleball suit, which I've never seen anybody play pickleball in a suit like that, but first time for everything. But, you know, and that's another example. If we have more time, I can get into what we're doing there. But the bottom line is, government can be a force for good with business, right? Government can help force multiply and connect businesses where businesses may not see that alignment because you're in your silos, you're working hard, you're doing your own thing. And so I see a new role, right? Where we are not somebody to be scared of, somebody who's denying and making things harder for business, putting more regulations, but somebody who's exponentially allowing you to get out there, make new connections, grow your businesses beyond even maybe what you might have imagined, and do things like become the title sponsor for a major sports league that you didn't even know probably was going on before that. So just give that little story as an intro for what we're doing in San Clemente.
Wow, that's a lot. I'll keep this short. Neville Boston, I'm the founder of Reviver. I've got to kind of piggyback on Chris and a couple things that he said. Public-private partnerships are really important, but smart ones, I think, are essential. And being able to have the mindset and understanding that technology and government can actually work hand in hand. You just have to have the right conversation with the right people, with the right frame of mind. And I think for technology that I helped to invent and is pursuing is tied to what is the benefit and what is the good and what problem are you solving. And I think if you come with that mindset and you allow folks to be able to see how it benefits them, because a relationship only works if it works on both sides. It can't be one-sided. That's how I think we've been able to move as quickly as we have. Is based on the fact that we work in conjunction and we work in partnership. And I don't think about what we do as anything less than working for a greater good. So, Noah Blom from Revival.
Thanks. Good. I'm glad we cleaned that one up a little bit. You were great over there, though. I'm not going to follow up. All right. So my name's Noah Blom.
I'm going to defend Huntington Beach. I hope.
We're in Newport. You can't offend, or that's with Huntington. I'm the mayor of Newport Beach, but I started in the hospitality world. I'm still in the hospitality world. And I have a slightly different idea of public-private partnerships. I think we're actually discussing one right now, and I think it's important to realize we're sitting in one right now. This was our old city hall. We did a great deal. We're still benefiting from that deal. We made it lucrative, but we also added something back to the community. And I really think that's what you constantly have to look at as government's role. Government is not there to prop up or launch a private entity. They're there to give back to the people that are paying into the system. And for this, it's generated in something like TOT tax for us, which is a huge driver for what our budget is in Newport Beach. So it does. It gives back in a lot of different ways. It generates a tax that is actually from people coming into the city rather than the residents that live here, still offering huge benefit. So, we're real careful with our P3s. And there's a couple of other levers that are making it even harder when we start talking about some of the real estate deals that are going on. So we can touch into any of that later, but I'll start it there, leave the introduction over, and then we'll get into the moderator's questions. We have 4.5 minutes left, by the way.
Hi, my name is Zachary Zaharek. I'm Associate General Counsel at Virgin Galactic, publicly traded on the NYSE, headquartered right here in Tustin, California. How many heard our CEO talk about a month or two ago? Just hands. Okay, well, Virgin Galactic basically does three things. We're building a fleet of rocket ships. We're sending people to space. And we are creating a customer experience around that. So the legal team the other day got together and we said, how many different agencies do we have to interact with the government? And it was 3 pages, single-spaced on those yellow legal pads. Everything from the FAA to NASA to the NTSB, which is the National Transportation Safety Board in the event of a bad day, all the way to getting a liquor license at our spaceport. So it spans the gamut. We have a operations in Washington, D.C., right next to the White House, to work with the federal government, and then on the state level, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, so we've heard a number of different things from everyone about sort of how you define public-private partnership and what we're talking about. Chris talked about facilitating private relationships to add to the community. And then ending with Zach talking about the alphabet of agencies that companies sometimes have to deal with, and interagency coordination can be challenging. But I wanted to start with our mayors, with Noah and Chris, in terms of how do you think that the public sector and the private sector can work together in novel ways to solve some of our pressing problems? We'll say homelessness, whatever you might put in the category of pressing societal problems. How do you think that can happen? Noah, do you want to start?
That's an easy one. Go for it.
Sure. Yeah. All right. When we are recording, that's good to note. I just don't want to be deposed later. So when we start talking about the homeless piece.
Well, other things
no,
too.
we'll jump into it. We might as well. Let's get it off our chest. Nobody thinks about it, cares about it, or sends me emails about it. We've taken a lot of different approaches, and I would say that number one for us, when we talk about all sorts of agencies, we're in California, so we could not be more regulated if we tried. So we're constantly working with top-down agencies from the public side. When it comes to the private side, government doesn't provide it. It provides the rules for someone else to. And so when it comes to the homelessness piece, there's a lot of tiers for it, whether it's a shelter or permanent supportive housing or mental health. The enforcement and those pieces do fall onto us. There's workings within those. So we've had a lot of partnerships. Ours tend to be with other cities as well. We built our shelter in Costa Mesa. The Newport residents just really like the space. And we're looking at a permanent supportive housing piece there as well. So those partnerships have spanned because we're helping build, we're finding funding from the state and feds, and we're working with private entities to build facilities and actually operate them. We're no longer doing it. Usually that falls into the nonprofit side. On the other piece, to touch upon what we do on the government side, I would say that the most interesting piece right now is the biggest deals we end up doing are when we own the land and then we go into a partnership with someone to, let's say, build a structure and do a profit sharing piece. Or maybe they have rights to the land and we want to help them with that same piece to increase our mobility. Right now there's a lot of rules that are making that very difficult coming down from Sacramento in the form of Surplus Lands Act and pieces like that, where you're having a harder time navigating a lot of these P3s. We've kind of moved over to a new structure of MOUs instead of long-term leases, build-outs, and profit sharings that go forth. And we found that they've become very, very successful when you're pairing with individuals and asking them to do something, and you're seeing a long-term result in it. So those are probably the ones we deal with the absolute most. And I'll let you get into drug rehab houses, because those are fun.
We don't have enough time, I don't think. Yeah, I'll build on that with, thanks for taking the homeless part, so I can talk about something more fun, I guess, that cities can do with public-private partnerships. One of the issues we have in San Clemente, you may know, like many coastal cities, is sand loss, coastal erosion, right? And of course, if you don't know, the number one tourist generator is a beach, right? That's the number one thing any city can have. And so it's really important to have that wide beach that people can enjoy and go out there with their families. And so that's forefront for us, top priority for San Clemente. So my campaign guy's here, Kevin, but we actually, and I hope I'm not busting any bubbles, we actually used AI to come up with an idea to bring together a bunch of mayors from some coastal areas just south of Newport, so from San Clemente down to Del Mar, where we have sand loss issues. Come together, 7 mayors, we call it the C7. We're going to bring together 7 mayors to have a summit, so we can tackle this issue regionally, right? So that we can come together regionally. What does that give us? Buying power, right? To go out there to private industry and say, we now have 7 cities motivated with federal grants, with state grants to address this critical problem for our local residents, for our local economy. And now that we've come together, that's our hope, we want private industry to come up with a regional solution, right? There's going to be a lot of money and a lot of energy into this really, really important problem. So I hope I'm not giving away that we had AI. And you see how I circled back to AI, Sinan? Right? We had AI help us actually come up with that idea. So at the end of October, we are going to get together in Oceanside, everybody in this littoral cell, and we're going to come together and think of ways that we can regionally work, be that sand deposits onto our shoreline, but also retention, also building new surf breaks, that will help slow the erosion. These are things that we need private industry to engage on, right? These are things that government's not good at, coming up with a new creative idea, right? We're good at finding the problems, we're not good at solving the problems, right? But once we have that regional approach, I think it'll be much more enticing for private industries, for really smart people, maybe using AI, to tackle this problem with us, right? To engage with us, to come up with new solutions. Oceanside actually has already done that, and they went with a global competition, and it was a New York Times article. So this is something that's critically important. And again, just to reinforce, I think when we come together as cities, when we come together as government officials, and we act in a unified voice, we go out to private industry and say, and like you guys did with Costa Mesa, and say, okay, now it's really not just a one-off. It's just not one city's one little problem, but this is a recurring problem that's going to be going on indefinitely. We need y'all out there to help us engage in creative solutions that are going to allow our cities to be resilient and our residents to be able to enjoy all those amenities that they pay so much for to live in this area.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I mean, things like the beach erosion don't end at the jurisdictional line of the city, so it's better to
homelessness neither.
Yeah, exactly. So, Neville, I wanted to ask you about your experience. Obviously, you have a successful partnership with the state with your company, and wanted to get some sense of how that happened and how it works.
Sure. It's interesting because a lot of times people look at working with government as an issue. I saw it as an opportunity. When you figure out, you believe, where there is an issue, how do you have the conversation? So I was fortunate enough when I came up with the idea for the plate to be able to meet with the deputy director that was over legislation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I can't see it.
Thank you,
yeah.
man. I really appreciate it. And the interesting thing was timing. We met with them at a time that the DMV was actually looking to go more online. Mm-hmm. And our idea was to be able to have a digital plate so you didn't have to actually go to the DMV to update your registration. But then it morphed into more. What other things can you do? So be able to, pay for your tolling, pay for your parking, be able to do transfers, between states so that you don't have to use, you don't have to go to a DMV someplace else. If you were moving from California to Michigan, you can do it all over the air. And that's the way that you would want to engage. So once we had the meeting initially with the DMV, next we met with the CHP, California Highway Patrol. And what we got from that meeting, I think, was the most important thing. Normally what technology companies do, according to them, is that they build something and then ask for forgiveness later. We actually asked for their thoughts and their ideas on what we were doing. And what they did is they opened up their test track and said, when you guys build your first pre-prototype, bring it out to our test track, we'll run it through its paces, and then we'll give you feedback. And that's because we looked at them as a partner, not looked at them as a hindrance, but somebody that we could actually work with. And then next, we had to run legislation in order to make the plates legal. And we did that. Of course, California being California, it took 3.5 years. When we did it in Arizona, it took 6 months. So you see the difference. But that being said, it was important in California because California has 1/7 of the driving population. There's over 40 million vehicles here. Yeah. And then on top of that, I think in Southern California in particular, you have more vehicles here in Southern California than you have in the state of Texas. So when you look at those numbers, if you're able to do it here, you can actually, do it other places. So what we've also done is that we brought in a law enforcement liaison that's been able to go around the country and inform and teach about 30,000 law enforcement, professionals about connected vehicles and digital plates, so that they understand that it's coming into their state. And it's how you decide that you want to engage and the benefits that you believe that you can get from it, and showing the states that, hey, by having this technology, it lessens your loads in these types of ways. And then be open to having conversations about other ways that you haven't thought of that could be a benefit. So when it comes to a public-private partnership, it's on both sides. The ability to listen to what people have to say, and then the ability to be able to respond and react to it, and then be able to deliver a solution that is useful across the board.
Yeah, that's great. I also think what you said there is sort of a mindset thing too, right? In terms of seeing a possibility and potential instead of assuming that there'll be a roadblock.
Right, because I was actually honestly surprised because initially when you think about DMV, you're thinking about
Nothing good.
Long lines, inefficient, all of these things. But it wasn't that. You had somebody that we were working with that understood what we were trying to accomplish, and then opened up an opportunity for us to be able to make it happen. They did, as an aside, they didn't have a way for somebody to bring an idea to them. So I literally had to write the RFI and then respond to it, and then write the RFP and respond to it, because they didn't have a way to get information that way. It's improved, but it was pretty draconian initially.
Wow. All right, well that's persistence and commitment, and that's what makes a good entrepreneur too. So Zach, let's talk about the space economy and industry a little bit and the partnerships that are involved there. We're talking about an economy that's changing from just a government-centric, the government doing everything, to commercial space actors becoming involved and partnerships between some of those actors too. So I don't know if you want to give a little background in how that works with
Yeah,
Virgin Galactic.
thank you, MC. By the way, MC's probably one of the best appellate lawyers in the country. She's got 5 cases in front of the Supreme Court right now. And she's getting an LLM, which is an advanced legal degree in space law. So thank you for that softball question. Anyways, how many people have heard of Spaceport America? Okay, maybe a couple, maybe 25% of the room. So in Las Cruces, New Mexico, actually in a city called Truth and Consequences, right next to the White Sands Missile Base, is a spaceport that the New Mexican citizenry purchased with their financing. And there were 2 counties adjacent that raised some bonds for about a third of that. And they made a commitment back in the early 2000s to build a spaceport. There's only 2 states prior to this that actually launched humans into space, and that was Florida, Cape Canaveral, as well as here in California. But New Mexico has now been the 3rd state to launch and create a commercial human space experience. And so what we've done is we at Virgin Galactic signed a 20-year lease with our friends in New Mexico. The New Mexican government owns the spaceport, but it's run by a government agency called the New Mexican Spaceport Agency, who's basically our landlord, and we're one of the exclusive tenants in the Spaceport America. It's a wonderful experience. We take off. We basically have, if you don't know how the operation works, we're one of the only space companies that takes off horizontally. So basically you have almost 2 747s welded together with a spacecraft that holds currently right now 4 astronauts with 2 pilots. And we take off in the New Mexican desert area, which is absolutely beautiful. The weather's pretty much perfect year-round, which is another reason we picked that area. In addition to the White Sands Missile Base, no commercial aircraft can go over it. So we got a kind of a clear sailing. We're flying monthly. We just announced our manifest for next month, and we just flew 4 civilians to space last week. But we basically take off horizontally. We get up 50,000 feet in the air. We drop our rocket ship, which then turns vertical and goes Mach 3 into orbit in about a minute and a half with our rocket motors. So we go commercial jet, then we go rocket motor, and then we turn into a capsule, like the capsules you see where you come down, the old astronauts, cosmonauts with the parachutes and stuff. We literally create a capsule, and then we glide down like the space shuttle, like you see in Edwards Air Force Base. So we hit all of the aerospace kind of buckets, so to speak, in our technology. And when we work with New Mexican Spaceport, we're running, we have a maintenance crew, we have a hospitality crew, we have the New Mexican Fire Department we work with. So there's a lot of interplay, and we invite for every, because it's not open to the public, it's invitation only, and we invite, of course, our government officials all the time, because we want that really bonding relationship with them. So New Mexico, the state, the Spaceport Authority, they're really wonderful to work with. On a totally separate note, we have an office in DC. We work with the FAA. Just picture this. You're in Delta Airlines and you get up, because it's a long flight, bi-coastal flight, and you start doing somersaults in the aisle. Do you think that they would allow that? The stewardess or the steward would probably tap you on the shoulder and say, get back in your seat or we're going to land this plane and you'll be arrested. However, when we fly people, like we did last month, we allow people to unbuckle and do somersaults in micro-orbit. And it's completely, there are no rules.
It's actually encouraged, I think.
It's actually encouraged. And there are no really rules when you're in a microgravity in a rocket ship. So the FAA wants us, Blue Origin, and which is Amazon's Bezos, as well as Musk's SpaceX, to get together to talk about potentially developing regulations, but they want industry input on how to govern when you're in that rocket ship.
Yeah, that's one of the good things when it's an emerging industry, is that the government wants to hear from the few operators who are in the space doing it well and doing it, doing well at this point, to tell us what you need and how it would work to continue to facilitate this industry, from happening, because it's quite expensive to do this kind of stuff. So that's one of the good things of being on the cutting edge of the industry. The other thing that I think is interesting, Zach, and I don't know if you want to talk about it too, is other private partnerships that are happening within the space economy. So, for example, at the Economist Space Economy Summit in LA last week, there was the CEO of Hilton talking about their partnership with Voyager Space to create the first hotel in space. So there's things like that are happening. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, briefly, we make our revenue two ways. We fly private citizens. We flew a 79-year-old with Parkinson's about a month and a half ago. So that's one revenue base. We also have experimental flights. We call them payloads. And you guys may or may not know, there's universities around this country that need to conduct microgravity tests. And where do they get their money? They get their money from NASA, because all these university professors apply for grants. They get the grant. Now they're funded. Now how do they get to space? They call our company. So in a weird way, there's this food chain where commercial space flight is working with universities, which are quasi-governmental institutions that get their funding from the government.
Yeah, and then didn't you have some Italian scientists?
Yeah, we 2 months ago, we flew the Italian Air Force. So now we're working with international sovereign entities, and it was fun. I got the contract that came in, which was in Italian and English, signed by the Major General of the Italian Air Force, and that was pretty cool. I had to kind of look at that for a while, but yeah, we're partnering with international governments to conduct experimental flights as well, because that guy was going to go. The lead astronaut, who was also a pilot for the Italian Air Force, in a couple months will be on the International Space Station. So he wanted to get a test through us to kind of get what it feels like to be in microgravity.
Yeah, that's very cool. And you don't need to be in microgravity very long to do some of these tests. So that's where Virgin can come in and help foster science. So we're coming to a close, and I wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to say, if for those who are dealing with the government in some way as private actors, do you have each person just sort of one word takeaway of what you would suggest or recommend for successful partnerships? Chris?
Okay. Yeah, I'll start out. And I think it has to do with what we're doing here, right? So you get a bunch of exceptional people, and you build social, personal relationships, and then you never know where it's going to go. In fact, I think the best thing about it is it's not about today's problems, it's about the problems you don't even know about today. But you've built that connection, and now you have somebody to lean on, right? So that's what we can do better, is engage on a personal level, get to build those social relationships. And I'll just close with one example, right? My man Neville here. Loved his idea, started thinking about it. As Noah knows, public safety is our number one priority, and I was a federal prosecutor, right? And I worked for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, so especially for me, police, fire. So I immediately started thinking, you know what? We can make it safer for our deputy sheriffs. We'll hear from Don Barnes in a little bit. We'll make it safe for our firefighters. Maybe this digital plate can help with that, because you'll have real-time information about where the trucks are, where the patrol vehicles are, and I know he's working with law enforcement already, right? So because of the relationship through this group, I'm going to put him in touch with folks at the Orange County Sheriff's Department, Orange County Fire Authority, and our own Marine Safety in San Clemente to make sure that he has the opportunity to pitch the benefits for our public and for our public safety professionals of his license plate, right? So that doesn't come just out of the blue. It comes out of those personal relationships that we're building right here.
Thanks. It's interesting. No, I was thinking because I had a conversation with Chris a couple weeks ago, Mayor Duncan, and come to find out that the city manager used to be in Imperial Beach, and we had our plates on their vehicles. So the whole conversation around that made sense because he had a reference point to say, hey, did this work and how did this look? And it went well, So I look at it as partnership. The ability to develop really good partnerships, to be honest and upfront about, the things that you need and make sure that they're mutually beneficial.
So I'll try to make my one word a little more one-like. I'm just kidding, Chris. Just here, you went first.
Sorry, you're out of time.
I think the one word I would use is cautious whenever dealing with the government, and this is coming from someone sitting in government. But I came from the private sector, and I realized a lot of things I wanted to do to make this easier to work with the private sector was illegal, almost entirely. You have to go through a long process in order to make things happen. And I think I learned in these last 3 years that the product of government is process. That's what they produce. They produce a process. And so a lot of times I think it's important, especially when we're dealing with partnerships, is that sometimes we look at the government as the last word rather than the first word. It's important to push back. It's important to tell them no. Like, let's try this. We're the innovators. You're here to assist. This is how it's beneficial. And so we have to be cautious in accepting their terms a lot of times. And we have to be strong enough to say, no, this idea is going to help people. It's going to add more money into economies. You want this. Let's find a better process. No.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Communication is the key to success. I tell that to my kids. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. You can't learn anything when you're talking. And so I do a lot of listening, and I think that's part of communicating. When people say, well, you must be talking, I do a lot of listening too. So I think being a good listener, effective listener, looking people in the eyes, shaking their hand, not looking for the bigger name in the room, and just focusing on what they have to say and repeat what they have to say is a way for success, no matter government, private, and in your personal life too.
Well, that's a great way to close, I think. Everyone can use that tip in their lives. So thank you so much, gentlemen, and thank all of you for being here and listening to our discussion of this.